Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, if you guys are ready, we'll start in just 1 minute. Let me just do something here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I begin in the name of Almighty God. I invoke His peace and blessings upon the prophets and the messengers, upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I ask Allah to extend His blessings to the Prophet's family and descendants, companions and followers, and the men and women that walk in their footsteps, and I ask Allah to make us among them. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullah khairan for coming out tonight. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and increase you in knowledge and sincerity. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate your journey to the acquisition of knowledge. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this beneficial to you in this life and the next. Allahumma ameen. One more session with this incredible surah. One more session with Surah Al-Anbiya, the prophets. And thank you. One more session with this surah that is about yaqadha and ghafla, that is about the contrast between heedfulness and heedlessness. A surah that is titled Al-Anbiya, the prophets in Arabic, indicating that the ultimate mission of the prophets, the ultimate purpose of the scriptures, is to basically bring people out of a state of heedlessness, driven by the material world, into a state of heedfulness. That is inspired by faith. You know, kind of those of you who are familiar with the icons of popular culture, like, you know, the Matrix, basically. So, you know, whether you want to take the blue pill or the red pill, you know, everyone is enjoying the blue pill just fine. The pill is when you realize that the world is not what it seems, that there is more to it than what you've been taught. And most people are perfectly fine just going on, you know, about their lives and their days, you know, accepting what is given to them, consuming what is presented to them, you know, and even digesting it more often than not. And so Surah Al-Anbiya is that wake-up call. You know, Surah Al-Anbiya is, you know, is Morpheus coming to you, you know, telling you that there's more to this world than you've been taught, and you've always known that there's something wrong with the world. And it is that moment when you realize that, oh my God, you know, I have been asleep for the longest time. You know, much like Amr ibn Rabi'a, you know, one of the Prophet's companions, when, you know, the surah was revealed, when this particular chapter of the Quran was revealed, he says, نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْنَا الْيَوْمَ سُورَةٌ أَذْهَلَتْنَا عَنِ الدُّنْيَا. You know, today a surah of the Quran was revealed that distracted us from the distractions of this dunya. So a distraction from a distraction is a good thing, right? As long as it's not a distraction to another distraction, you know, rather it is a distraction to the truth. And we also said that this surah was revealed, you know, during the period in which Mus'ab, one of the Prophet's close companions, was already doing, you know, his missionary work in the city of Yathrib, soon to become the city of Medina. And he was having a tremendous amount of success, owed to the fact that the people of Yathrib were more heedful. And the people of Mecca were still roiled up in their heedlessness. I also feel like, and I've never talked about this before, I always feel that, you know, we have so many sayings for this phenomenon. You know, the grass is greener on the other side. Zannar al-hayy la yutlib. Right, the flute player of the neighborhood, you know, is usually not as good as the musician from the next neighborhood. Or, you know, the Urdu-speaking people would say, you know, gargi murgi dal barabar. You know, that the dal of our neighbors is better than dal is the garbanzo beans, which is, you know, poor man's food. And so the garbanzo beans of the next city over is better than the chicken that is made in our city. There's always that. And so I think that the people of Mecca were just way too familiar with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was just one of their own. You know, always this guy who's been here for 40 years. Why is he telling us, you know, about God and these things? Whereas, you know, for the people of Yathrib, there was a novelty, you know, about the call, and that's, you know, why they take it seriously. And so, more often, I think we assume that familiarity leads to acceptance, and that is always, it's not always true. Sometimes familiarity leads to rejection. Okay, the criterion at the end of the day is whether or not you're spending enough time and spiritual energy to examine what it is that is being presented to you. And at the beginning of the surah, ayah number 1 cuts directly, you know, through the chase. The reckoning has neared when people are in that state of heedlessness. The surah, as we've covered it last time, also covered other aspects of aqidah, other aspects of the Islamic creed. You know, the transcendence of God, His omnipotence. You know, the fact that God does not belong to the universe and therefore cannot be personified. We cannot apply anthropomorphism, you know, to God, making God into, you know, someone that looks like us, or someone that, you know, has mood swings, and someone who is often blindsided, or someone who fights with one of his prophets and actually loses a wrestling match, and all these you know, things that the people over the centuries have ascribed to God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends all these assumptions about Him. The surah also covered the portion that you know, indicating that God was not begotten and He did not beget. The whole, you know, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but personally, a lot of people say, you know, Jesus is God, or Jesus is the Son of God, or whatever. We're used to Christians saying those things, but you know, in movies, when I say someone who's Catholic, say, you know, the Holy Mother of God, you know, in reference to Mary, for example, that offends me so much, you know, because to say that God had a son is one thing, and then to say that God has a mother, I mean, that is significantly more disturbing. And so, when the surah says that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lam yattakhidh walada, you know, he did not take a son, and he was not a son of a woman anyway. Again, it's the simplistic sort of like antiquated mind, you know, that could not escape the notion that God is beyond human perception, so we ascribe human qualities to God. Ayah number 6, you know, references, you know, the Christian Trinity, you know, very directly. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا بَلْ عِبَادٌ مُكْرَمُونَ. You know, they claim that God has taken a son. You know, rather he created worshipers. He created servants, like he's always done. And you know, people are born into that into those traditions, and they don't question anything. In fact, last time I said, you know, people are born into the Islamic tradition. And they still don't question anything, and they don't ask anything, and they don't try to critique anything that is given to them. And that is why, more often than not, we see young people lose their faith, because they've never taken that faith in the first place. It was always a superficial thing. It was always a breakable thing. It was always very volatile. No wonder that it vaporizes at the first challenge. Tonight, inshallah, we're going to continue the wonders of Surah Al-Anbiya, the prophets, by jumping straight into ayah number 30, which is, I think, by far the most miraculous verse of the Quran. I always say that the Quran has incredible, miraculous verses, verses that really get you to feel like, subhanAllah, this is incredible, this is unbelievable. But this ayah in particular, and I'll show you how the next three ayat are basically slaps on the face, waking people up, getting them out of their ghafla, out of their heedlessness, right? Wake up, very, very full throttle, head-on collision here is happening. All right, so ayah number 30, what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَوَلَمْ يَرَى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا. Are they who are bent on denying the truth, are they not aware that the heavens and the earth were once one single entity, which we then parted asunder? Let's ponder upon this for a second, okay? So it says that heavens and earth. Usually when we say heavens and earth, what is one word that suffices instead of heavens and earth? Like what's one modern word that we can just use? Universe, thank you, right? So usually when the Quran says heavens and earth, we're basically talking about the universe, everything. So the ayah basically says that the universe, all of the universe, even though the universe is scattered into little pieces, right? In fact, they say that the Milky Way, no, not the Milky Way, I think there's two galaxies that will eventually merge into one galaxy in the next a few billion years. And then after that, they will actually separate from each other. And this will happen without any of its solar systems colliding with each other. What does that indicate?
Order.
It indicates order, but what does it take for these massive objects to nearly collide, but they don't actually collide with each other? Exactly, the distance is so vast between the individual solar systems within one galaxy. Okay, so when those two galaxies go like this, they'll like slide through each other like that, without actually hitting each other. Okay, there's a vastness about the universe, and the universe is scattered into these small pieces, right, into all these galaxies, constellations everywhere, and there's such vast distances between its components that even if they literally go into each other like this, they won't collide. Yet the verse in Surah Al-Anbiya says that the entire universe that was actually one unit, and that unit has exploded or was cleaved asunder. I'm not a proponent of using scientific facts and truths to explain the Quran. The Quran is not a book of science, and I think what is today science might get disproven tomorrow. Rather, I always believe that the very miracle of the Quran is that for every generation, its language is compatible with the scientific truths of that generation. And as science and technology and as our understanding of the world evolves, okay, the Quran continues to be compatible. And the verses of the Quran continue to be accommodating of the evolution of those scientific facts. So if you lived amongst the Arabs 1400 years ago, you had no knowledge whatsoever of the Big Bang. You don't know anything about these things, but you take this verse and you say, wow, the universe, all of this was one unit and then it exploded. That's fascinating. Yeah. If God says so, what do I know? But today, right, there's 100% consensus amongst all astrophysicists that the universe was this one unit made mostly of hydrogen, and then basically it exploded and gave rise to the galaxies, gave rise to the solar systems, gave rise to all cosmic systems, to the planets and the stars and so on and so forth. We know that today, okay? And the ayah uses very clear, very, very clear terminology. كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا. Okay? When you have a piece of paper like this, what is fatq? Fatq in Arabic is to do what? It's to rip off something. It's to rip it. Okay? When there's a tear in your clothes, they say maftuq. right? Fatq. كانتا فتقا, the ayah says, that they were كانتا رتقا ففتقناهما. So they were together and then we cleaved them asunder. I actually think that the second half of the ayah is even more powerful. All right, what is it that God says here? وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. And we made out of water every living thing. We made out of water every living thing. SubhanAllah. What a statement. Before I go into water, by the way, what is this ayah trying to do? This ayah basically speaks to people who have the audacity to try to disprove what cannot be disproven. Okay? Can you disprove the existence of God? No. Because God is not subject to the empirical method. There is no lab testing that I can do to prove or disprove God. God is not a falsifiable concept. God, is not something that I can prove or disprove. So the most you can do is to say, I have no evidence of God. It's possible that God exists, but I have no evidence of God, right? Humble people would say that. I always say the extent of rejecting God, basically the boundary of rejecting God is agnosticism. It's to say, well, I don't know if God exists or not. Maybe he does. It's not something I can prove. It's not something I can disprove. But atheism means what? It means that you believe that there is no God. Tell me exactly, how is that any upgrade over believing that there is a God, right? If we say I believe in God and that's faith, when you say I don't believe in God, that's also faith, right? That's why I actually call it the religion of atheism, because it's a dogma. Atheism is a dogma. It has its own creed, it has its own rituals and everything. It's a religion, but it's a religion that is based on this unsupported belief that God doesn't exist. And so you can call us, superstitious, and you can call us whatever you want to call us as people of faith, sure, but we're going to call you the same thing. Because what applies to us likely applies to you, logically speaking. And so it is everything else in between. And that's why I always say that faith in God in and of itself is a precarious thing. If someone tells you, I believe in God and I have absolutely no doubts in that, like 100%, should we believe that person or think that he's not entirely telling the truth? I think that if someone tells you, I've never had any doubt in God, not once, then that person is probably not telling the truth. Because every single one of us have experienced a moment of doubt at one point or the other. Isn't that true? Let's be honest about that as well. One of the brothers like, no, actually it never happened to me. Nope. Yeah, that's impossible. That's impossible. Because again, it's still faith at the end of the day. And faith means you accept something that you have not seen. When you say I have zero doubt and I have never experienced doubt ever in my life, then basically it's almost like you've seen God. And if you've seen God, then it's not faith anymore, then it's knowledge. Okay? And then it's like the angels. Then it's not Iman anymore. You've actually been removed from the realm of Iman, right? That's not faith. And so faith requires that you are somewhere on the continuum in between. Not the 100% theism where you know that God exists, and not the 100% atheism where you believe that God does not exist. I think all of us, 99% of humanity, is in the continuum somewhere in the middle, one way or the other. All right? But that's not the point that I'm trying to make here. What I'm trying to say is that this particular verse of Surah Al-Anbiya speaks to people who have the audacity to say God doesn't exist. Because it basically slaps them, in the face. A reference to the universe being one unit is a reference to its contingent nature. Isn't that true? And when we say that the universe has a contingent nature, then that implies what? Any object that is contingent is incomplete and therefore requires a maker. It requires a maker that is outside of it. Okay? And I think that this is probably why someone like Einstein believed in God, because he could not philosophically resolve the issue that the universe has a beginning and therefore has an end, therefore it is contingent, and any object that is contingent has a maker that started it. Until someone like Hawking, for example, who would say, no, it still doesn't require a maker because gravity in and of itself can bring the universe to existence. Okay? Now, the most uneducated person that lives in a tent in the desert, what would the follow-up question be? Where does gravity come from? You basically responded to a question of contingency with another contingent. Okay, you did not help us. Okay, you can go on like this forever, and we're still going to corner you and say who started the first event. So the one that started the first event has to be something that is incontingent, and something that is not dependent on anything else, and something that does not have a beginning has to be someone that is infinite. Again, this is all just logic. So the ayah again attempts to bring people from this ghafla, from the heedlessness, into some kind of, wait a second, I need to think about this, actually, how can I, logically overcome this piece, right? But let's go back to water. What are the senses in which, water is required for life, or that, every life came from water? There's actually multiple senses in which that is true. Take a guess. So let's start with the basics. Okay, your body weight is mostly what? Water. Is mostly water, over 70%. The protoplasm, which is the cellular makeup of every organic organism, is mostly made of water. Right? You are mostly water. So every single one of us is literally a blob of water walking around. Okay, so we are literally made of H2O. Okay, so it's true in that sense. But it is also true in what other senses? That life cannot exist without water. Every single living organism needs water at some point or the other. So not only that we're made of water, we also need water. But if we follow the evolutionary logic, all life on Earth presumably evolved from what?
Single cell.
From the sea. All life on Earth started as marine life. We started in the oceans, So even if we take that perspective, from the evolutionary theory, from evolutionary science, which I personally believe is valid, it would still support the ayah, although that's not something that we're after, are we? That's not the point. For me, it suffices that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that water is the source of life and every living thing comes from water. I'm okay with that. I don't need to verify anything beyond that. All right? Those are two of the most incredible physical truths of the universe, literally in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, about 16 words. 16 words in the Quran. It have detailed for us two of the absolute most fundamental scientific truths of the universe. Probably thousands of PhDs written on these two concepts, right? But it doesn't end there. Ayah number 31. وَجَعَلْنَا فِي الْأَرْضِ رَوَاسِيَ أَن تَمِيدَ بِكُمْ. And we have set up firm mountains on earth, lest it sways with them. وَجَعَلْنَا فِي الْأَرْضِ رَوَاسِيَ أَن تَمِيدَ بِكُمْ. So it's almost saying that the earth would have swayed, the earth would have been unstable, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the rawasi here is mountains, these heavy objects on the face of the earth so that the earth is not being unstable. So classical commentators, some of them would say that the earth is very fragile and would have moved except for the heavy weight of the mountains on them that is keeping them in place. Does this sound scientific?
No.
We don't know that. We don't, like, if all the mountains on this earth were removed, the earth is going to become unstable? That's not it. Okay? But I will show you how this is, again, another incredible fact of physics. What is the core of the earth made of? It's molten metals, right? molten metals, gases. It's absolutely erratic. It is absolutely like an inferno of crazy elements, going, against each other and swirling against each other, right? Now, if there was no Earth crust, would there be life on Earth today? No, we can't all swim in lava, okay? So the Earth's crust is what protects life from the Jahannam that could emit from the center of the Earth, from the core of the Earth, right? But again, the Earth's crust is basically what? It is this thin layer. It's actually very, very thin compared to the diameter of the Earth. This very thin layer that's swimming on fluid, okay? Precarious or not precarious? It's very, very unstable. And so even though this Earth crust protects us from what's underneath, it's still relatively unstable. It cools down and it warms up, and then the tectonic plates are grinding against each other, and all this movement and stuff like that. What is it that the Earth's crust is trying to do throughout all of its movements?
Stabilize.
Exactly. It's trying to stabilize. So the Earth's crust is trying to stabilize, so it keeps grinding against each other, and it keeps, overlapping against each other, and all of these things. What is the end product of that stability? Mountains. So the mountain is ultimately a sign that the Earth's crust has stable. Now this stability is not absolute, because earthquakes still do happen, volcanoes still do happen, but alhamdulillah, 99.9% of the time, that stability is provided, because there still needs to be natural disasters and things like that, again, to remind man of his own heedlessness. Hey, you're not in control here. There's someone that manages all of this. But again, the incredible nature of this verse is that it tells you that the mountain, it's not just this big blob of rocks that sits on the face of the earth. It stands as a testimony to the end results of the stabilization process. Okay? You understand now why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would use the word awtada, pegs, or use the word rawasiya, right? These heavy, stable mountains, okay? Because again, this is the end product of the stabilizing process, so that life on the Earth's crust become possible. And the miracle continues. Ayah number 32. It's pretty juicy tonight. I told you, these are slaps on the face. Wake up. وَجَعَلْنَا السَّمَاءَ سَقْفًا مَحْفُوظًا. And we have set up the sky as a canopy well secured. The word sama in Arabic means canopy. When the Quran talks about sab'i samawat, the seven heavens, this is usually a reference to what? The cosmic systems. But when it says as-sama, just one sama, then usually this is a reference to as-sama ad-dunya. What is as-sama ad-dunya? The nearest system to us. Okay? Now, so I'll give you my own ijtihad. I mean, this is not necessarily written, in the books of the classical commentators. But again, with the technology and the knowledge that we have today, we understand that sama, that the very first system of heaven is basically our immediate sky. And what is in our immediate sky? The atmosphere, right? What are the layers? How many layers in the atmosphere? Remember from your physics classes in middle school?
4.
How many? There's no guesswork about these things, guys. 17? You don't guess about these things. It's either you know or you don't know, right? Okay, there's 5 layers of the atmosphere. I have them actually written down here. The exosphere, which is the outer one. That's the one that faces the universe, right? The thermosphere, that's the second from the top. The mesosphere, the stratosphere, and ours, the one that has our oxygen, is the troposphere. Okay, that's the one that's right. It starts from the surface of the earth, to about 9,000 or 10,000 feet. All right. What is it that the atmosphere does? So if we assume that the atmosphere is as-sama ad-dunya, that this is our very first canopy, what does it do? Again, it says mahfuza. There's an element of preservation about this. What does it preserve exactly? So many things. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. Think about it. Without the atmosphere, what happens to our oxygen? You know, you guys watch, like Star Wars or, all the space travel movies, okay? When there's a hole, in the body, in the hull of the ship, or maybe they open up the, what do you call it, the door that actually leads to the outside, has a name. The airlock or whatever. When they open that up, what's the first thing that happens?
Vacuum.
Right, but vacuum leads to what? All the air is really gonna gush out with absolute force. Okay, because the vacuum of the universe is gonna suck all the oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, all the air from the surface of the earth. So life will never exist if there is no atmosphere. Because everything here will be sucked out. Alright, that's number one. Number two, what else does it protect or preserve? It protects us, right, from harmful gamma rays and cosmic rays and stuff like that. If you are, that's why like the astronaut suit is not just meant to protect, you to keep your oxygen. It's meant to protect you from extremely harmful, cosmic rays that would literally kill you. And so our atmosphere provides protection and preservation from that, right? Number three, what else does the atmosphere do, particularly the exosphere?
UV. Reduces the UV.
It definitely reduces, UV rays, okay? But the exosphere in particular does something really huge that most of us don't feel. When you are at night in your backyard and you see a shooting star, what is that? What is a shooting star? Angels? It's a meteor. It's a meteor that was about to fall on Earth. And it is the atmosphere that protected you from this. Now, is that an absolute protection? No. Some cosmic rays still get through. Some gamma rays still get through. Some UV rays still get through, right? Some meteors still get through. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still showing you who's boss. Sure. But 99% of the time, we get that protection. Do you see how accurate this is? That as-sama is truly is a source of that protection. I can't think personally of better, more effective words to describe that than these incredible descriptions. So again, the ayat, the 3 verses in a row here, slaps on the face, waking people up from heedlessness to heedfulness. And if all that did not work, what about the remembrance of death? If all of these things don't work, what is the one thing that reminds people of the volatility of life the most than the remembrance of death? There is, some people attribute this saying to Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, some attribute it to other people, some say that we actually don't know who the author is. مَنْ أَرَادَ صَاحِبًا فَاللَّهُ يَكْفِيهِ. Whoever needs a friend, Allah is sufficient. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ مُؤْنِسًا فَالْقُرْآنُ يَكْفِيهِ. And whoever needs a companion, the Quran is sufficient. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ كَنْزًا فَالْقَنَاعَةُ تَكْفِيهِ. And whoever is looking for a treasure, contentment will be sufficient. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ مَوْعِظَةً فَالْمَوْتُ يَكْفِيهِ. And if you're looking for admonition, then death is sufficient. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَرْضَ بِهَذِهِ الْأَرْبَعِ فَالنَّارُ تَكْفِيهِ. And if you don't settle for any of those 4, then perhaps the fire of hell will be sufficient for you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And so if you need admonition, if you need reminders, if you need a wake-up call, and none of these philosophical discussions or scientific outlooks helped you out, then at least remember the inevitability of death. I've been actually actively working hard the last few months to write my will and to build a living trust for our family, which I should have done a long time ago. And quite honestly, if you don't do that, your family will hurt a lot. Uncle Sam will probably take about 20% of whatever it is that you leave for your family if you don't have a will and a living trust. And so I strongly recommend that you guys take that idea very seriously. Myself and Brother Yaqub were working with this particular money manager in order to build our own wills and trusts, so that we are familiar with the process entirely. And once we really know all of its details, we will start recommending it to the community. And the beauty of it is that the will, think of the will as the bylaws for the living trust. And so in the will you can write, my wealth will be distributed this way, my son will take this amount, my daughter will take that amount, and this amount will go to the masjid, that amount will go to the orphanage, this amount will go overseas, whatever it is. And the beautiful thing about the living trust is that it's a living trust. And so it continues to be an irrevocable trust after you die. And so it's not that your kids will tear up your wealth and one of them will take this house and the other one will take that car. There's no such thing. The wealth stays together like an entity. And your family, whoever you dedicate it to, will have an ownership in that entity and will become a trustee and will get a monthly income from it. And so nothing is broken down unless all the trustees come together and agree. And that's why families in America built wealth over generations. You hear these stories about a trust kid. You say that. Someone that made it in the world because of the trust that their family left them. I think that this is an incredible idea that needs to spread in our Muslim community, and it's absolutely in line with Sharia. I mean, we're all supposed to be writing our wills, right? But the point is, these are the conversations that we are supposed to have. Life can take you, and you're so busy, and you're going to work, and you're having fun, and you're traveling, and you're spending so much time on Netflix and social media, but then, for how long are we going to be so heedless about the absolute basic truths, okay? I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that every single one of us is going to live like, Imam Tabarani and then pass 100 years. That'd be great. Who wouldn't want that? But should you or should you not be ready if that moment comes a little bit earlier, okay? That is the whole point. Write your will, build your living trust, and then, put your head on the pillow and sleep comfortably, knowing that, inshallah ta'ala, you're leaving something solid for your family. There's no fighting, there's no dispute, there is no sons saying daughters shouldn't get anything, and all these sick confrontations that happen in Muslim families because nothing is written down, right? And so, ghafla makes people forget about these truths and the necessities of being prepared, right? And the younger you are, the higher your advantage, by the way, in writing a will or building a living trust. The younger you are, the absolute most incredible your position is in this country, okay? The older you get, the advantage becomes less and less and less. And so, this has nothing to do with age. Death can befall us anytime someone is driving home. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with us and protect us all, but it could happen anytime, right? And so you always want to be prepared. That's yaqadha, that is heedfulness, right? So this is something that we, again, need to be reminded of, and that is what the remembrance of death does. Okay, I'm healthy, alhamdulillah, and I feel good and everything, but you never know. I would rather be ready and I would rather be prepared. And here's the thing, the ayah continues, subhanAllah. And that's why, again, since we started, this is the fourth ayah, and the session is almost over, and we're only on 4 verses tonight because, again, it is absolutely a powerful ayat that we've covered together. So the rest of 35, وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً. And through the bad and the good things of life, we test you. Through the bad and the good things of life by way of trial. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I will test you. I will inflict trials on you. Some of those trials will be very difficult trials. Trials of loss, trials of death, trials of tyranny, trials of depression, trials of illness. These are sharr, okay? And then there is trials of khayr, trials of good things. Wealth, power, beauty, big nice house, stable career. I understand that the trials of bad is what comes to mind when the word trial is mentioned. But what is a trial of good? Which one is more dangerous, by the way?
Trial of good.
Which one is more dangerous?
Trial of good.
The trial of good is significantly and substantially more dangerous than the trial of bad. Why? Because more often than not, people will stand the trial of tyranny. But when the tables are turned, they will become much worse tyrants than the tyrants that hurt them initially. And you are familiar with live stories from across the world about exactly that. There are many people who will stand the trial of poverty, but when they become extremely wealthy, they will never give anyone, they will never support anyone, they will extravagantly run and basically burn through their wealth and spend on the absolute most horrific things. And when you see them, when they did not have wealth, they were nice people. And the minute they had wealth, they completely turned. Like shaitan, took over, right? There's so many instances where people did actually much better with the trials of bad than the trials of good. And why are the trials of good ultimately worse? Because the trials of good make you in a state of heedlessness. The trials of good make you heedless. The trial of bad slaps you in the face, wakes you up. It's very obvious. Poverty, oh Allah, I'm so poor, I need your help, I can't pay my bills, I need to feed my kids, I'm going to lose my house. That's the trial of poverty. It makes you actually conscious of God. But the trial of wealth, I have all this money and I spend and I travel and I act arrogantly and I buy designer clothes and $5,000 purses and everything. And gradually you're becoming heedless and you are acquiring bad qualities and you can't even tell. That's why it's significantly more dangerous. In the hadith, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ. Right? The affairs of the believers are astonishing because they are all good regardless of what the affairs are, right? إِنْ أَصَابَهُ شَرٌ صَبَرَ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. When a trial of bad, happens to you, you persevere and it'll be good for you. وَإِنْ أَصَابَهُ خَيْرٌ شَكَرَ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. And when a trial of good happens to you, you show gratitude and you thank Allah for the blessings, and it would still be good for you. Okay? So the way to respond to that is, in times of difficulty, you persevere, and in times of prosperity, you show gratitude. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِكُلِّ صَبَّارٍ شَكُورٍ. Only the patient and the grateful will be able to see the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will be able to see the signs of God. Otherwise, everyone else is heedless. So it gives people ghafl. Ayah number 37. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ مِنْ عَجَلٍ. Man, doesn't this apply to all of us? خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ مِنْ عَجَلٍ. Man is a creature of haste. Aren't we? Aren't we? Man is a creature of haste. Almost like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, you think you were born from the mud of the earth? No, you were born from a concentration of impatience. That's what the ayah says. If impatience was molded into something, it would mold into man. Okay? We want the instant gratification. We want the immediate results. We want to feel good now, right? And we are very easily distracted. Okay? It's very difficult for us to focus on one thing. I remember like a few years ago when they taught me about the breathing exercise. Have you ever done a breathing exercise? What is the breathing exercise? Breathing exercise, basically you completely shut off your mind. So you're not thinking about anything except the movement of air in your throat. So, and you're not hyperventilating, but as you breathe normally, and you only think of the air moving through your throat. Okay? And every time you think about something else, like there's a bird that just chirped, let's just smell, my mom is making biryani tonight. Like, it's all the other distractions. Every time a distraction happens, you bring your mind back to the movement of air. The absolute longest I managed to do that? 30 seconds. And after 30 seconds, I always think about something else. I could not get my mind to neglect the world and focus on one thing for more than 30 seconds. I want you to do that exercise, but not right now. Not right now, okay? All the brothers are going to fall asleep. When you go home, right, try the breathing exercise and see realize that your mind is so used to distractions, you can't focus on one thing. And that is what causes heedlessness. Because heedfulness means that you're giving your fullest attention to one thing. But because we are creatures of haste, as God describes us in the Quran, move from, oh my God, where's the, constantly trying to find things to distract us. Download as many apps as possible on your phone so that, you're constantly finding something that keeps you busy. There is no moment where it is just you and God, or you take a walk without listening to something. I tried, by the way, for about 3 months not to have a smartphone. And I was kind of like, looking at, I wanted to see myself and share with you the findings of my own little experiment. I never promised myself not to have a smartphone. Like I told you last time when I lost my smartphone in Hawaii, I decided to just go on for a few months without it and see how I feel. And I absolutely enjoyed it. Okay, so I had this old BlackBerry that I used for 3 months. But there was a couple of things that, kind of got to me. Okay, number one, there was multiple events. So I would be like at a wedding, or I'd be like at a masjid or somewhere, and I'm asked to speak, and then, there's a particular verse of the Quran or hadith or a story, and I needed to go online and verify, or a word that I'm missing or something like this, and I need an immediate response, right? Instant gratification right now. And I couldn't. And I got stuck a few times, and my BlackBerry would not help me in that regard. The other piece I think was just GPS navigation, and I had to use the one in my car, which is not as reliable as the one on your phone, which gets constant updates and traffic and stuff like that. But the biggest thing really for me was audiobooks. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and I could not listen to anything for those 3 months. And so I decided to bring the smartphone back into my life. But I realized that the trick is this. It's very, very simple. Wallahi, if you follow this, the smartphone is going to work for you, not against you. Minimize the number of apps on your phone. Minimize the number of apps to the absolute bare minimum. All right? All the financial apps like, Chase, Wells Fargo, all that are removed from my phone. All the other financial apps that we use to manage the community, Stripe, PayPal, all that removed from the phone. Social media, I've removed it a long time ago anyway. And so if you need some of those things, you're going to go on your computer and you're going to check it once or twice a day. You don't need to be going on PayPal like every 5 minutes, right? Just do it on the computer once a day, all right? I have WhatsApp. I have Slack, which we use for staff communication, and the phone, and my Adhan app, and a couple of other minimal apps that I actually used and I needed, and that was it. And of course, every time we are conditioned. You're just sitting idle. What do? Just stick your head in your phone, grab in your pocket, grab the phone, and just keep scrolling. So I still do that, but I stop after 2 minutes. Why? Because there's nothing to do. Like, oh man, this is a super boring thing. I just put it back in my pocket and I try to find meaning for my life somewhere else. All right. So that has actually been the trick, and I strongly recommend remove most of the apps. Don't believe what they tell you, like all these apps that you think you can't live without. Allah. You don't need 99% of them. And use your phone for your own purposes. Don't become the product. If you don't know who the product is, well, guess who the product is? You are. All right? خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ مِنْ عَجَلٍ. We are a creature. We are creatures of haste, right? But where does haste come from? Who put it in us? Allah. So he's telling you, I put that in you because that is going to be your greatest test, right? The predisposition to be hasty, right? The proclivity for haste. I want you to look at ayah number 44. We're almost done here with tonight's session. بل متعنا هؤلاء وآباءهم حتى طال عليهم العمر. We have allowed all of these sinners, as we've allowed their forebearers, their ancestors, to enjoy the good things of life for a great length of time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, most of the classical commentators say that this is a reference to the civilizations that existed, before Islam. All these, different nations and so forth that thought they were very strong, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them wealth and gave them blessings and gave them prosperity until they thought that they were going to keep those things forever. حَتَّى طَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْعُمُرُ. And it says here al-umr, not al-ajal, because ajal is what? Ajal is the limit of your life. But umr is the number of years that you will actually live. All right? It's usually, if we use, algebraic terms, it's, equal to or smaller than your ajal. So your umr is equal to or smaller than your ajal. It cannot be longer than your ajal. Your ajal is the absolute extent of your life. So you cannot exceed your ajal, but most people may not even reach their ajal because they have made bad choices, they've eaten a lot of pizza, someone committed suicide or whatever, so that basically cuts their ajal. But you will never exceed your ajal, right? So it says here, بَلْ مَتَّعْنَا هَؤُلَاءِ وَآبَاءَهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, all these nations and their forebears, their forefathers, their ancestors, they've been given a lot of blessings. And by giving them a lot of blessings, it's almost like God was giving them more rope. He was giving them more ease. Here's more blessings. Here's more time. And the more you're taking that in, you actually become more and more heedless. You become more and more heedless, and you start making assumptions about the world, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the trials for us, and He's telling us about them, all right? It's like the speed trap. The cops will tell you the speed limit on this road is 65 miles an hour, and it's, the speed limit is enforced by whatever, the aircraft, it's enforced by the radar, whatever. There are actually certain counties in America where law enforcement is required by law to tell you that the cop is lurking in the corner. Right? There are counties in Ohio where I used to live where it would say, a speed trap 300 feet ahead. The law requires, so cops cannot act in a sneaky way and hide like behind the tree and go like with it's so dishonest when they do that. It makes me sick. And all these people, they left their homes in the morning, they're going to work, trying to start their day. Maybe someone is a little bit late. He's 42 miles an hour. Okay, it's not gonna be the end of the world, and they'll stop you, right? In some states, they'll actually tell you there's a cop ahead, so you need to slow down. The law requires them to say that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you about the trials. He tells you about the punishment, and in advance gives you all the details in the Quran, so that you know exactly what to expect. All right. And here's the next piece that is also fascinating. أَفَلَا يَرَوْنَ أَنَّا نَأْتِي الْأَرْضَ نَنْقُصُهَا مِنْ أَطْرَافِهَا. Don't they see that we will come upon the earth and curtail it from its peripheries? نَأْتِي الْأَرْضَ نَنْقُصُهَا مِنْ أَطْرَافِهَا. Curtail the earth from its peripheries. So again, if we're still thinking about civilizations, about empires, thinking about the Roman Empire had territory, and they had blessings, and they had prosperity, and they had all kinds of good things going on for them. And then what happened? Their enemies nibbled away at their territory gradually. So God caused this curtailing, this nibbling of the territory that was granted to such nations. Maybe this is a reference to how Islam spread. But Imam Razi has this other perspective about it that I will share with you because I find to be extremely useful. That nanqusuha is not curtailing, rather depriving. Nanqusu is to cause naqs in something, is to make it less, which means it's something that was taken away from it. So it's almost as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here that I will come upon these territories and I will start depriving it of what? Min atrafiha. Taraf is the edge or the periphery, but taraf is also an outlier. A group of people that are, sort of like doing their own thing. Taraf is people that are at the two edges or the two sides of the bell curve. Okay, what are the atraf of societies?
Extremes.
The extremes. Okay, what are the extremes of society? The very small percentages of most societies.
The richest of the
The thinkers, the artists, the philosophers, the wise, the people who love God, the shepherds in general of every society. Most societies are made of goat and sheep. You know, that is the truth. Okay, let's face it. I pray that inshallah we are shepherds, not wolves, because some people love to be wolves. You know, it's almost, you know, sheep, wolves, and shepherds. You know, so we make your pick. Okay? We don't want to be wolves. Most people just want to settle for being sheep. And some of us are shepherds. And so if you look at the bell curve, okay, maybe on one side of the bell curve, you know, there is the wolves. On the other side of the bell curve, there is the shepherds. And everyone else under the bell curve is sheep. All right? And so if society is deprived of its thinkers, its artists, its musicians, its poets, you know, its inventors, people with great ideas, what's going to happen to that society? It will decline or not. All right? So it's almost like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that civilizations decline by depriving them of their smartest people. So who remains? Just the average individuals. The sheep that are looking for guidance and they want someone to tell them what to do. And Imam Razi talks about this in Taj al-Arus. Imam Razi, again, in his time, was a breakthrough. He was revolutionary in his perspectives on the Quran. And so some of his views would make you slightly uncomfortable. And so I occasionally cite some of his perspectives because, you know, they really sometimes hit the mark, and I wanted to share that with you. And so in the process of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testing, you know, these communities by giving them more rope, allowing them to have wealth and prosperity and so forth, He's taken away the very, very factors of their success. Okay? He's taken away their thinkers and their philosophers and their artists and so forth, and what remains? Nothing. Look at America today. What is the source of America's power? It's military, sure.
Immigrants.
But the source of American immigrants, well, thank you. All right, you know, spoken like an immigrant. Sure, definitely. But, you know, the source of America's power, in my opinion, is its innovation. There's absolutely no other country in the world that enhances and encourages innovation like we do here in America. It's absolutely astounding. You know, in the last 100 years, almost every great invention, almost every great idea, almost every great company comes from America. Something that is so remarkable and incredible about that. That is the source of America's power. Now, if America starts bleeding, you know, even look at the sports. The best athletes in the world come from America. You know, the best inventions in the world come from America. The best artists in the world, I mean, look, the amount of music, the amount of movies, the amount of art that is produced in this country, it's mind-boggling compared to the rest of the world, right? But America will be definitely on the decline if what happens? The brain drain, thank you. If we start losing all of these people, and I actually think it's already happening, right? But, you know, and we're gradually seeing the repercussions of this reversal. Remember, the great philosophers, the great inventors, the Newtons of the world, right? The Spencers of the world, the Jean-Jacques Rousseaus of the world, even Karl Marx, you know, John Locke, all the great minds 200 years ago existed where?
Europe.
Existed in Europe, right? Now, flashback 500 years, all the great minds existed where? In the Muslim world, right? The minute a civilization starts losing its bright minds and a brain drain, what happens to that civilization? It starts collapsing, all right? I think this is such an astute way of looking at the world, right? أن نأتي الأرض ننقصها من أطرافها. That we will come upon a civilization, we will come upon a territory of this earth and start depriving it of its best. Start depriving it of its. Some of you might think that this is a bit of a stretch of the meaning of the ayah, and maybe it is, but again, I shared with you both, and I'll let you enjoy them both, inshallah ta'ala, as you investigate the beautiful Surah Al-Anbiya. Jazakumullah khair. I'll stop here, inshallah, and I'll take some questions. We need to pray Maghrib, right? Yes, let's pray Maghrib. And how about we pray behind the chairs, and we'll leave everything as is, so we can come back for Q&A, inshallah.